No, we are. Where? Oh.
This conference will now be recorded.
Well, good evening. My clock shows 6 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Manson.
Present.
Templin.
Here.
Lane.
Here.
Huggins.
Here.
Milburn.
Here.
Maddox.
Here.
Schultz.
Here.
All commissioners are present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Item 3, general business. Approve the planning commission agenda. Any changes or corrections to make to the agenda? Entertain a motion?
Make a motion we approve the planning commission agenda as written.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Seeing none, the agenda is adopted. Item 3B, approve the minutes of the planning commission meeting held on December 17, 2024. Any changes, corrections, or additions to make to the minutes? Seeing none, I entertain a motion.
Make a motion we approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes have been approved. Item 3C, disclosure of conflicts of interest. Anyone have anything to disclose on tonight's agenda? Nope. Seeing none. Item 3D, disclosure of outside communications regarding commission business. Again, I think this is tied to the agenda. Seeing none, that concludes our general business. Item 4, call to the public. Members of the public who wish to address the planning commission regarding items not on the agenda today may do so at this time. Any presentation is for information purposes only. No action will be taken. There's a 4-minute time limit. If anyone would like to address the planning commission, please come to the podium, give us your name and address. Seeing none, I'm assuming we have no one online.
That's correct.
I will close the call to the public. Item 5A, public hearing. Consider new communications tower SUP for Evergy. Brad.
Was hiding in the back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, planning commissioners. Mr. Chairman, what you have before you is a special use permit to consider a telecommunications tower in the M1 zoning district. Quite familiar with this property. We did approve a special use permit for a substation there, and now Evergy is asking for a telecommunications tower. The multiple representatives for Evergy are here, as they always show up. They would like to address the planning commission. If you have any specifics regarding the tower and its uses as far as where it's going to communicate and the exact purpose for it, they can certainly take care of those questions for you. As our process moves forward, we did send out letters and did the notification. There's only one property owner, and that is Sunflower Redevelopment Group. The property itself is on leased ground from Sunflower, so it is within the initial area that you can see on page 2 that was rezoned, then the special use permit, so it is on that subject property. It's the Atlantic substation. And then also you can see on page 3 the aerial photo and as best as I could determine where that location will be. The site plan information we received was just of the constructed areas. If you recall, there was an outside buffer outside the fencing area that was going to be restored to native grasses. And so this is actually just adjacent to the substation itself. Basically, I'm going to run through the matters to be considered. It's overall staff's opinion is it's not a significant change or anything like this. We're already going to have several tall towers with the substation itself. And this is really not a significant difference in what's already out there. As far as character and neighborhood, compatibility with proposed uses, one of the things about this site, it is a couple miles south of the Panasonic location. There are no residences nearby. It's in a very remote part of the Sunflower development, Astra development. So going through the criteria that we look at, the criteria is generally positive. As far as the environmental impacts, we do have in our SUP criteria to contact Kansas Department of Wildlife Parks, use Fish and Wildlife, of course the FCC, and then the Federal Aviation Administration. That information is included in your packet. The tower itself will have a pretty small impact on the development of DeSoto and Astra, but it is a necessary component of all the activities that Evergy is now managing and taking care of for providing power to this location. So overall, it's a benefit to the development itself. It's something that's needed and necessary. One thing I did want to call your attention to is the fencing. I went back and forth, and Patrick and I had several discussions on whether or not the criteria that I highlighted in your packet, it's on page 11 of your staff report, about whether or not the fencing material had to be masonry or some sort of other more aesthetic fencing rather than just chain link or wire fencing. Now you can see in your staff report, it did get pictures of what was out there and what was approved previously, and it's staff's opinion to go ahead and proceed with the fencing that's out there to provide security for the new tower. The reason that if you think back to when a lot of the cell towers were going up, 20 years ago, maybe even more, that there was this provision that we needed to have some sort of aesthetics around it. A lot of these towers are going up in residential areas or business areas of towns, and that need to provide screening, buffering, landscaping, all those things were necessary for these locations that were within city limits or nearby residential areas. And this area is clearly not near anything, at least at this time, and certainly going to take some time to get there. And we already have talked about with the initial SUP that if there's a time that additional landscaping needs to be installed, that that can be addressed when that SUP comes up for renewal. Also, an interesting thing is the initial permit for telecommunications towers for 5 years, and then subsequent approvals can be for 10. And we just did one for 10 years, that cell tower over by the Waverly Water Tower. And so its initial term was 5 years, and then the subsequent ones were 10 years. So that concludes my remarks. Certainly stand for any questions, and Evergy representatives would like to address the Planning Commission. They do have a PowerPoint prepared.
Thank you, Brad. Questions for Brad?
Brad, on this vicinity map that shows the detail of the tower site,
Yep.
it's just outside the fence around the Evergy site?
Yeah, the existing SUP for the substation, and then this is adjacent, but just outside of it. But they'll use the one fence on the north side, and then just fence around where the tower will be.
But it is inside the Evergy fence?
No, it's inside the, easement.
Yeah, it's inside the easement leased area, or the lease area.
So was the area rezoned for the Evergy site the entire easement or within the fence area?
The Evergy site, and you can kind of see in the staff report, first exhibit shows the entire lease limits that were rezoned. And then the substation itself is actually inside that, because they had to have landscaping and it's basically what we talked about, the native grasses, things like that. So the fenced area, the fence line is not on the lease line. It's in about 20, 25 feet.
But the area rezoned for, that is M1 out here
Yes,
is in the easement area?
it does include the easement. That entire easement area has been zoned M1.
That's what I was curious about. Thank you.
Any other questions for Brad? Brad, do we have any other 120-foot towers?
Actually, the tower, the Waverly Tower is a little bit taller than that.
Okay, so this 120 foot's nothing unusual.
Yeah, and our max height is 150.
Okay.
That's allowed.
Okay. So, to be clear, the fence is it would be a variance from what we typically would require, which will need to make a special finding for the special use permit to permit that fence.
That is correct.
Okay, is that clear to everybody? Okay. Would you like to hear from the applicant? No. That is a choice. If you don't feel it's necessary, we don't have to do it.
So this is a public hearing?
This is a public hearing. Okay, probably don't need the PowerPoint, but at this point, I'd like to open the public hearing. No objections, public hearing is open. You are free to approach the podium and say what you'd like.
My name's Tyler Burton with Evergy. Brad, thanks for the presentation there.
Sorry, Tyler, could you give us an address?
Yes, 818 South Kansas Avenue in Topeka. Brad, thanks for the work you did there. Saved me some time to talk. Do you guys have any questions that I can answer for you about the communications tower?
I think we're good. Thanks for comment.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have a comment? Well, public comment. I will close the public hearing then. The matter's before the commission.
I just don't understand item F in the special use permit. I'm just a little bit unclear on what that means, like specifically F2. I'm just a little bit unclear of what it's saying there.
Not sure where you're looking.
Page 12 of 12, item F2.
Okay.
Sorry, could have been more specific.
Oh, are you talking about the shared use?
Yeah.
Oh.
What is that alluding to, Brad?
Yeah, we also had a little bit of back and forth with Evergy on that as well. Once again, this gets back to the point when towers were going up and just didn't want to have a proliferation of towers. So if there's an opportunity for a shared use, the tower owner must at least evaluate and talk to the city about whether, if somebody wanted to put a cell receptor or booster or something on that tower, so we just wouldn't have multiple towers all over the place. So there's a provision that they do need to at least consider and
Okay.
potentially allow for a shared use.
The verbiage of 60 foot was throwing me off, and I didn't know if that meant that they couldn't mount things above 60 feet or what that meant.
Well, I didn't look specifically at that, but I just was focusing mostly on the shared use.
Whatever it is.
Oh, it seems like if it's taller than 60 feet, then they at least need to
Yeah.
reach out, because we don't want to have,
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I was just looking for clarification.
okay.
So I guess on that point, I mean, did you talk with Evergy about who's intending to use this tower?
Yeah, we did have discussions about that, and they made it clear that they would honor that section of the special use permit procedure.
And what was the approved height of 60 feet? I must not have heard that answer. What
Oh,
would
it's
that mean?
basically saying if somebody was going to put up a tower and it was higher than 60 feet and it was in a vicinity, apparently, you have to coordinate with an existing tower owner to see if you could use that tower
Okay.
instead of
Got it.
putting up a second tower.
Okay.
It's
That
to
makes
avoid a
sense.
pin cushion, basically,
Yeah.
popping
Yeah.
up.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Other discussion? Let me ask, how do you feel about the fence issue?
Not gonna be anybody seeing it other than the users.
Right, I mean, as it develops, you may feel differently about it, but you're gonna feel differently about that substation fence too.
Yeah.
At least it matches what's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, it is the same fencing that'll be used for the other, so it just look like an extension of that. Okay. Thank you, Brad. There's no further discussion, I suppose we'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we recommend approval of the special use permit for Evergy for 5 years, and the use of the same chain link wire mesh fencing currently in place at the Atlantic substation.
One second.
Moved and seconded, any further discussion? Roll call.
Schultz,
Yes.
Maddock,
Yes.
Milburn,
Yes.
Huggins,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Manson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Hope you didn't waste a lot of time on that PowerPoint. Item 5B, a public hearing to consider rezoning from R1 to R3 Grata Development.
It's ours. Yeah, I just put it on. Sorry.
Brad?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What you have before you is, as you said, a request to rezone location at Kill Creek and K-10 Highway from R1 to R3 residential multifamily. As you know, this item has been on before the Planning Commission before, and the applicant recognized that there was a lot of controversy about the first submittal and withdrew the ultimate recommendation for the city council, came back with a new plan. Last meeting, he did approve the rezoning to C2 and R2, and this now is to sort of fill in the area that is being proposed to be R3. So it is similar to what was proposed before, but it has been reduced in size, the multifamily area. And so it's along the same concept that were initially proposed, but as we went through the process and the public hearing, the proposal has been modified to include less R3 and more single family, which seemed to appease property owners nearby, as also the city council did ultimately approve the zoning change. Interesting, this one, no notification letters were sent out by staff because all the buffered areas of the 200 feet were actually owned by Grata Development, and then the other portion is for K-10 right-of-way. Did put up the signs though, and according to Councilmember Daniels said that there has been, and the representative from Grata, Travis Schramm, was here tonight, that the residents did know that this rezoning application was going to take place, so the signs do work. So that's good to know. Just real quickly, the staff report did change. It does now consider the R2 as a district that we need to look at when we evaluate the criteria, and then also the C2. So you can see on page 3 of the staff report, and also the different change. Now, interestingly, the applicant is not rezoning those areas in the northeast corner, and then also sort of the lower area where there's just a heavily wooded area, and there's creek running through there, a dry creek that only is used when there's heavy rains, things like that. So that was another concession that was made initially for the resubmittal of this development itself. Moving through the criteria for the R3, all the issues really are the same. The utilities doesn't have sewer, and a benefit district, some sort will have to be formed. The road improvements have not been made. We know that Waverly is not something that at this point can handle that type of road traffic, but staff believes that those issues can be worked out with the developer. The developer's also been in contact with other entities nearby that would like to form a benefit district and improve this area. So, but this is the first step. You have to have the zoning to even be able to move on to the next steps in the process. So with that, I will stand for any questions you may have. As you know, now we're looking at an R3, and the adjacent districts are R2 and C2, but this is a pretty common type of situation to have a mixed use setup for a lot of areas, especially ones that are adjacent to commercial areas within a growing community and also along an interstate or 4-lane highway. So with that, I'll stand for any questions you may have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Brad. Questions?
Brad, just, cause I was poking around on our website, making sure I know what R3 is. 45-foot maximum building height, is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
And then maximum of 24 dwellings per acre, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It's basically about a 3-story building.
You might have said it, Brad, but I didn't hear it. Have you got any calls from neighbors on this?
Not on this one, no.
Okay.
Okay, no more questions for Brad, thank you. At this point, I'd like to open the public hearing. If you'd like to be heard on this matter, please approach the podium, give us your name and address. Seeing no one online,
I think our visitor is Patrick Reevy.
I got Pete,
Yeah, it's Patrick.
okay?
Yes, that's me.
Okay. With that, I'll close the public hearing. The matter is before the planning commission. Discussion?
Well, I think this is, hopefully this is something the neighbors will appreciate. I see this as a good use of this highway frontage. We're being supportive.
Okay.
I agree. Same thing with Mark. I think it's the right spot for it. And hope everybody's in support of it.
I agree.
Is it too late for somebody from the peanut gallery to speak?
Well, we have closed the public hearing, but if on the off chance that you didn't
I know you
understand.
did, and I apologize for being late. I had to work late tonight. So.
I would be delighted to have you approach the podium and give us your name and address and tell us whatever you want to say.
I am Anita Woywad. I live at 30895 Explorers Trail, which is going to butt up to this monstrosity. Moved into the area, that area 25 years ago. I am a 71-year-old member of this community, have never lived outside the community. I am deeply distressed because we do not have the infrastructure to support this if you are going to open it up to Waverly. If none of you have driven down Waverly, you literally, if you're meeting a truck, you literally almost have to take the ditch and wait until the truck passes you. It's unfortunate that we have all these walking paths going nowhere up 83rd Street, and there is more walking traffic on Waverly and Corliss and Explorers Trail. So I am just very stressed about the whole situation. Is it desperately necessary that we open the back of it up to Waverly? Is that necessary? Because of the amount of houses you're going to put in there. You're going to have another outlet. Is that right? You're shaking your head.
Well, I don't know the answer to that. I know that
Okay.
the plan that's been presented does have an access point onto Waverly. We approved one that didn't. Probably not, because they're gonna have to have more than one point of access for this many people.
So that means, again, you're going to have to build up Waverly and 89th. 89th is almost as bad. The mayor lives on 89th. They're very narrow accesses. So, I mean, I hope you all genuinely think long and hard about this. You ask us to build our nice homes out there on 3 acres, which we all did, and now we're going to be butted up to what I think the last meeting I was at, he said $200,000 to $300,000 homes, which is not much in this day and age, unfortunately. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I will now reclose the public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. You know, I guess from my perspective, this is a rezoning. This is not permission to build. In order to build, no doubt, there's gonna have to be significant improvements to Waverly. There's gonna have to be probably improvements to 89th Street. There's gonna probably have to, certainly infrastructure, sewer's gonna have to be brought there. A lot of those things are going to be required in order to actually build this. The question before us tonight is whether or not this is an appropriate use of the land where it's located. And for a variety of reasons, not the least of which went through Brad's analysis, buffering the highway, having this kind of use is absolutely appropriate. And so I'm in favor of it. I'm not giving them a pass to just build it without doing anything to fix the infrastructure, but that's not really what we're asked to look at. It's a factor to consider is whether or not we have infrastructure in place, but long-term, yeah, it's probably gonna happen. And there probably are gonna be improvements to Waverly, and while you're worried about the truck traffic, your other neighbors are like, we don't wanna fix that road because we like it being a county road, country road. So I get that.
You're right.
Yeah, so that's gonna be the fight that's gonna have to happen, and that's all gonna happen in the future, but this really isn't the issue before us tonight. The issue for us tonight is, assuming those things get resolved, is this an appropriate land use? At least that's how I understand it. Anyone else?
Well, I would say that the concerns voiced in the public hearing are valid.
Sure.
And I agree with it. But I also, in the staff report, it does address those, and it does say that those issues will be addressed as the plan moves forward on this site.
If you haven't had the benefit, I mean, the recommendations, you know, complete site plan including traffic analysis, stormwater study, lighting plan, landscape, buffering plan, utility improvements to support this land use, all has to be done. And none of those are here. So this is really just.
Which is part of the city's policy.
Yeah.
And that's not being done just with us, that's normal operating procedure. So I'm confident that's going to happen before this traffic can be cut loose.
I think it's an appropriate fit for the location.
Since there is the buffer of the houses on the east side now, it's kind of, something's got to go there, and if you got to put one in, that would be the place, I guess.
Any other comments? Entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve item 5B, application to rezone 14.71 acres from R1 to R3 at the Kill Creek and K10 interchange at 9120 Waverly Road.
So we're recommending approval to city council?
Yes.
Second.
Can we add the condition of, as recommended for the motion, to add complete site plan and all that kind of stuff? Because that would be part of it.
I don't know that it necessarily does, but it doesn't hurt.
But that is in the report.
Yeah. Down on the bottom, on page 2.
What's your thought, Mike?
Yeah, if I could just interject, the way our code is set up, we don't and have never conditionally zoned something. You see conditions in a use permit or other actions like this, but it has not been our practice, and our code really isn't set up to put a condition on a rezoning. So that's just for your information.
But Todd, you're spot on. The report does say the following conditions, so I totally understand why we would think about doing it, but I don't think we have to. So, do you want to propose an amendment to the motion, or are we good?
No, we're good.
You stand by your motion? You stand by your second?
Yes.
Further discussion? Roll call.
Manson,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Huggins,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Maddock,
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your comments. Item 5C, consider text amendment on residential lot widths. Brad?
Mr. Chairman, we've also talked about this issue several times previously, and so it's really not much new information for you. Some of the comments that I received from the Planning Commission last time was to mostly on the open space requirement that you could go to a little bit smaller lot, square footage lot. The width would remain the same as 50 feet, but the depth could be reduced slightly if a amenity or recreational feature were added. And we have had this criteria in the city code for quite some time, but I also added a section on the stormwater detention area can be included as an open space area. So that does clarify. In fact, Commissioner Milburn wanted to know if the amenity, a recreational feature, a trail, whatever it may be, can be in a detention area. And so I did clarify that. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. So that was just the suggestion. Once again, it's before the Planning Commission to discuss those recommendations from staff. But our primary goal on this was just to codify the 50-foot wide lot width for R1A, R2, and then the R3. So as you know, from all our zoning districts, you can step down, and just want to make sure it was consistent throughout the entire residential code for R1A, R2, and R3, that a 50-foot wide single-family lot would exist.
Thank you, Brad. Questions for Brad? I noticed you added the stormwater detention can be included in the open space calculation. I know that was an issue that we had talked about, and wanted to make sure that that was something that would be counted. Is everybody okay with that?
No.
I figured you'd have an objection.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I don't think kids can, if we're gonna have a recreation area, I don't see the stormwater detention being an accessible place for the kids to go to play or to play ball or whatever, play catch. I don't think that's acceptable.
I guess maybe I need to clarify, and I didn't write this very well. I didn't want like the detention pond to be part of the open space. I mean, that's part of all of the open space, but the amenity itself, I mean, obviously can't be in those sections. It would certainly, and we've got stream buffering requirements, things like that. But that's why those open space areas are rather large, because you have to have a buffer on each side of the stream. And my intent was to think it would be along the streamway corridors, things like that, not in a detention area itself. So maybe need to revise that a little bit so it is not the.
So maybe just say stream corridor can be included in the open space
Yeah,
calculation?
that sounds like a reasonable.
Opposed to stormwater detention?
Well, I just want to be clear that if we exclude that, I mean, typically detention areas that take up 5 to 10% of the whole platted area. So when you're talking about 5 to 10% of like a 40-acre tract, I mean, all the stuff that we're doing to reduce these lot widths, we're going to cancel that out by excluding the detention area in the open space. So all the work we're doing here tonight, we're just going to completely cancel it out, because that area, I mean, to say it's 10%, I know I'm going on the high end, but 10% on 40 acres is four acres, and you get 3 lots per acre. So you're going to lose 12 lots by taking that out of the open space calculation.
Brad, is this strictly an open space requirement, or is there active open space requirement?
Now, we did have, in the R1A, that's the only way under this 7B. It's the only place that this open space area shows up. And my thinking is if you're gonna, we want developers, if we want them to put in, you know, a gazebo or a fire pit or some playground, something like that, we need to give them the opportunity to have a little bit smaller lot to fit these things in there. And I guess, and I wish I would have thought this through with my language, but I don't want the detention pond to be used. It can be within that streamway corridor, it can be in those areas that you would typically not build in anyway, that need to be, that are in many ways part of drainage ways, things like that.
It would seem to me as a compromise, if we had two criteria for the open space, one being active and one being just open space. I mean, the detention pond is open space, but it's just not someplace where the kids can play. But if, you know, if there was an overriding open space requirement and then a requirement for active open space where they could have their walkways and gazebos and basketball courts or whatever they want to put in there. I don't know if that would.
Well, I think there's also a bit of, in all of our city code, there's a bit of common sense that you have to apply, that if somebody did have a detention pond, I mean, you wouldn't put the playground there, and I would like to think that our current staff and future staff would say, yeah, that's not gonna work. We need to find a different place for the tennis court or whatever that amenity or recreational feature may be. Now, a trail could potentially run through there. So it's one of those things that I understand the concern on the language for stormwater, but it is these sort of streamway corridors that have to be preserved and left out and to allow water to move throughout the site. I would like to be able to have those be part of the area that could be used for open space and a recreational type feature.
Thank you. This is a public hearing, so with that, I'd like to open the public hearing. No objection? No. Open the public hearing. The matters before the planning commission. For any members of the public who'd like to address the planning commission concerning this issue, please approach the podium, give us your name and address. Seeing none. No one online either, except Patrick. Hi, Patrick. Yeah, I'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, actually, when reading that, it just says stormwater detention can be included in the open space, so it's not like, and once again, that's that common sense thing that, you know, if somebody's evaluating a preliminary plat that had, you know, a playground in the area that they're concentrating and pushing the water to hold it, I would like to think that future staffs would, public works directors, city engineers, somebody, planning commission members would say, that's not gonna work. And so I don't wanna overwrite the regulation, but I think it's, to me, the more I look at it again, it's like, I think it works as is. It just says that stormwater detention can be included in the open space calculation.
This is just a suggestion, but what if you said that the open space could not, the stormwater portion of the open space could not exceed a certain percentage of the total 10%? And that way you kind of get a little bit of wiggle room there.
I don't know that I'm a huge fan of that because I don't know what that, any particular development might be. I think the can is fine. I understand your point. It's probably better to say may, and maybe that's at the discretion of staff, because you can use your common sense on that. And if staff thinks it's okay, that's something that you might be able to allow. But, you know, to me, part of this, not that I really want to see this again in our agenda, but, you know, maybe it's not a bad idea to table it, let you kick it around and noodle on it a bit, just to make sure that it says what you want it to say.
I mean, I'd certainly be open to that.
The other thing to consider, Justin might back this up, some stormwater detention areas may see water one time every 2 years or 3 years, that it actually,
Yeah.
in the event of a major rainstorm, it may actually have water in it. 95% of the time, it will never see water.
I think 119th and Ridgeview, right there at the corner, it just sits there and collects garbage because there's
Right.
nothing there.
That's-
Yeah, I agree
That's
on that.
typical, but they're gonna change that. They're gonna change the requirements that are in the process.
But I mean, that's a good point, though. I mean,
Yeah.
stormwater
It's-
retention is not often
I
used.
mean, I also think on all these, the playgrounds that we're talking about, all this open space where all these kids are gonna play for these developments, I mean, do they really play in these expensive developments, all these playgrounds that we put out there? I mean, they all go to Lexington Park, they all go to the park system that we have in the city. So we're,
My kids
Yeah.
would. My kids would use it,
Yeah.
okay.
but that's my kids.
Well, it depends if there was a pool in that same area or not.
Yeah. Riding your bike from there over to Lexington Park's not exactly an easy bike ride.
Right, but then, I mean, I'm thinking of DeSoto, how many open tracks, large open tracks that we have that we can do? I mean, how many acres do we need to support a pool? I'm looking at our development.
I agree.
I mean, we gotta have a large
You did.
development to do that, and we're getting to that point, we're gonna force our hand to do that, and we're gonna slow development down.
And recognize, my concern with this has always been, I am less worried about this as infill development and much more worried about people dropping this out on Edgerton Road.
Mhm.
And this can be used for that. So I don't have a real problem with giving a little thought to if you're gonna drop this into what's a greenfield right now and say I'm doing it because I'm building affordable housing. Saying that may be fine, but you're gonna have to do something for these people, especially those people out there. If this is gonna be disconnected from the rest of the city, they're gonna need someplace. And so I do think it's not a bad idea to have a requirement, but that's,
My sticking point is still, I still think we need to change the width of the lots.
Same here.
you do think you're done.
I don't think.
I see no
do.
reason to.
I think Commissioner Milburn made a really compelling argument the last meeting that we were discussing this is, right now, what we're saying is that by approving that, the standard R2, we're allowing multifamily in there. This is constricting it to single family with the same lot sizes. So all we're doing by, in effect, is just saying that you're okay to build single family homes on these, the things that are zoned like this. You cannot come back and do multifamily. Similar to what the gentleman from Grata said, because if we zone it that way, he has the ability to, technically, by the way that we zoned it, as you could do a duplex.
Right.
Well, you know, one of the goals of a lot of people still coming to DeSoto has been, they want to get away from big city. They want to come out to something. If they wanted to get tiny lots and be all crammed together, there's lots of other places. I'd like to keep DeSoto so that we still have some character, so that we're not all sandwiched in. So regardless of whether you change that to allowing the green space to be in there or not, I'm probably not going to be in favor because I don't want to reduce the lot sizes.
I see no reason to. It's not gonna dramatically change the price of the house, so.
No, I mean, they might be
If you
able to
want,
create.
I'll redo my motion, we get rid of R1A, period.
Nobody's ever used it.
But that's okay. I understand.
But
If we're gonna have it, I'd just as soon keep it with the 65-foot width. There's 2A, or 2 and 2A, and 3's already got the smaller lots.
Okay. Well, I think you're pretty clear where two of our commissioners stand. How about everybody else? You want to talk about it some more?
I'd be
Table
perfectly
it?
happy with
They're
how
on
it's
the
written
other
right
side.
now,
You're good without any change?
without any change.
Okay.
I would agree.
Or written with the red lines.
I was over here messing with the stormwater verbiage. I wrote stormwater detention and private amenity space might not overlap one another beyond. And that's as far as I got.
I mean, on that point, I would not be in favor of voting for this proposal unless we were comfortable with how that ultimately got written, and so I would be in favor of tabling it for another discussion, but that's where I would, if we're gonna vote it up or down tonight, I'd probably be a no.
I hate to bring up another issue, but what the heck.
Well, you're here.
Another concern I would have is when does it become effective open space? You know, if you develop a 5-acre piece of ground, what good is the open space you're gonna provide in the zone? What are you gonna be able to do with it? I kind of wish that was a consideration in that. We could define something that is a minimum usable, effective open space.
Well, I think you can certainly have a effective amenity or feature in, you know, an area that you couldn't build typically a residential home. So I think there's that ability to do that. Now, one thing I want to point out, we've talked about this Arbor Ridge is a planned development, and they've got a requirement for open space in that development. There's no trails, no anything back there. There's some nice, you know, sort of wooded canyon areas back behind a lot of those homes. The intent of this, and I still think I think it works the way it's written, is all we're saying is those areas will exist, especially with DeSoto being a fairly rolling hills and some ravines, things like that. If you're gonna use this as an R1A, we want to have some sort of feature in there that you, and we could maybe even limit it to trails or something like that. That's pretty easy to run through some of these lower areas along creek beds, things like that. So,
Well, Mark's point, maybe it's not for every development bigger than 2 acres, but maybe it needs to be like 5 acres, so that you actually have something that's meaningful.
Yeah, I know you've got something in your mind for a site, but, you know, there probably are gonna be some flat sites out there that don't really have much water to them, or, you know, an area that's difficult to build for whatever reason, where they could use all the ground for lots.
well, and that's part of the point of this. I mean, in many ways in DeSoto, a lot of the areas that you develop have these built-in streamway corridors. But some communities, I mean, they're just developing farm ground. And it would be nice in those instances to say, hey, you've got to run it. I mean, they still have to create their drainage ways, things like that, but it would be good to have those open space in the development itself, not just continual homes packed in.
So, for example, on the Arbor Ridge, we did what we're trying to do, take the detention out of it, we would lose 12 to 15 lots on that development. Because we have to do the open space on spots outside of those stream buffer areas that Brad's talking about. Because those are all over Arbor Ridge. We'd have to lose lots to put in the open space.
Well,
That's a perfect
he
example.
clearly said stream corridors is what he had in mind, so that would be that. It's different than the stormwater detention.
Well, that's, detention areas are in there too.
Well, I'm saying, to me, that needs to be massaged to the point that it's clear. I'm not clear.
Yeah.
I do like your suggestion though, with the slightly larger. I was just, again, over here, a 2-acre parcel is gonna be 280 by 280 if it's an exact square, right? That puts that open space at 28 by 28, and you're not gonna fit a lot there if it's perfectly laid out. So, yeah, I think you've got a point there.
For the discussion, anybody got a motion for this tar baby?
Mo-
Since we're arguing back and forth over parts, maybe we should table it as suggested.
I think it's a brilliant idea.
Who thought of that?
So my question would be, have we spurred your imagination to rewrite this thing, or do we need
No, I think we've got the direction to come back with a revised ordinance, revised
We have
suggested
opened and
ordinance.
closed the public hearing, so I don't know we necessarily need to do another public hearing on this.
No,
If
we don't.
Bring it back, we can table it. So.
Yeah, you can close a public hearing and then direct staff to bring it back at the February meeting.
Because we all want to see it again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we table this till the February meeting for staff to digest comments and readjust.
Second.
Moving seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Schultz,
Yes.
Maddock,
Yes.
Melbourne, Huggins,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Manson.
Yes. Said yes.
Motion to table here.
You didn't see his name.
Thank you. We have no old business, no new business. Calendars is here. Anything anybody else wants to talk about?
Yeah, on that February sixth, that First Amendment,
Yeah.
discussion, is that still on?
It is, it is.
Six
Yeah,
o'clock?
6 PM here in this room. Yep. Looking forward to that.
Is that gonna be a Zoom thing,
We could make that available. I can't remember what the meeting invite said. Did we mention anything like that? I don't see any reason we couldn't. If you need to do that, why don't you email me as a reminder? And then I'll make contact with the presenter there at the sheriff's office and see. I would imagine it'd be pretty easy to do since we're having it in this room.
So before that, if you would like to attend what's essentially is kind of a happy hour, is the Friends of the USD 232 Education Foundation Gathering, which is also on the 6th, from 4:30 to 6. So if anybody would like to attend that, you're welcome to go. I have a flyer. Thank you. That's true for anyone in the audience too, if you guys would like to go.
Enough stuff going on.
Okay, then I suppose we would entertain another motion.
To adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
Moved, seconded, no opposition? We're adjourned. Rock chalk.
Thank you.
This conference is no longer being